First of all, I'd like to thank a few people. First, I'd like to thank Brother Andrew Herbst, who helped me write this sermon. I'd like to thank Brother Barkus for asking me to speak. I'd like to thank Brother Barber for everything he does for us, really. But he's just been there to support me. He pulled me aside right before service, gave me some encouraging words. I'd like to thank him for that. I'd like to thank the Moonies for allowing me to come up here and speak. And I'd also like to thank my grandma and grandpa for making the hour-and-a-half drive to come hear me preach tonight. Right. Thank you. So the title of my sermon, if I were to give it a title, would be Unashamed. So imagine that you're just going about your business someday, you're walking down the street, you're at your work, you're at your school, whatever, and somebody stops you and they ask you about what you believe in your faith. Now, are you the kind of person that would tell them Acts 2:38 on the spot, tell them what we believe, basically give them a Bible study right there? Or are you the kind of person that would say, oh, well, I go to church over here, and then just be on your way? Well, in Romans 1:16, Paul is writing to the church at Rome, and he says, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. So why are we ashamed in the first place? In Romans 10, Paul writes saying, whosoever believeth in him should not be ashamed. So Paul says that if we believe in God, that we should not be ashamed. So if we are ashamed of God, it's disobeying the Bible and basically saying we don't believe in him and what he did for us.
Yes.
I feel like one of the biggest reasons we're ashamed in this world today, and it's more common amongst the young people, myself included, is we're afraid of what people will think of us, and we're afraid of being judged. So many people say it today, don't judge me. It's a joke between me and my dad. I always say, don't judge me, and he always says, oh, I'm judging. But what do you care about more? What your peers think or what God thinks? In the Bible it says, if we're ashamed of our Father on earth, then when he comes back, he will be ashamed of us. He will say, I don't even know you. If we're ashamed of him here on earth and we don't spread his gospel, if people ask us about our faith and we're just like, oh, well, I go to church here and are ashamed of it, then when he comes back, he'll be like, I don't even know you. And to me, that would be the ultimate disgrace, is the person who created you to say, I don't even know you. This world is looking for a leader. Most people do nothing, I believe, because they feel like no one else will understand or agree or support them. But it is scientifically proven that in a crowd, no matter how bad a speech is, if 2 or 3 people stand and clap, the rest of the crowd will also stand and clap. No matter how bad, no matter how unorganized, whatever, no matter how bad it is, if those 2 or 3 people stand up, then the rest of the crowd will go along with it. Right. So we could use this to our advantage, or we could use it to our disadvantage. We could say, well, this will hurt us because so many people in this world are leading us in a bad direction. All these celebrities, all these movie stars, they're all living in the world doing bad things that are leading this world in a bad direction. But we could also use it to encourage us and say, this will help, because if we all stand together for Christ, then imagine how many souls we could win if we all band together and are not ashamed for him.
Right.
If you don't stand up, there's no guarantee that someone else will. I had this experience with one of my friends. He was always inviting me to youth ministries, inviting me to youth rallies, inviting me to church all the time, because he was just so on fire for God. And one day, he just kind of just slowed down, he just stopped, and eventually he left the church, really. And I wish I would have said something to him. I wish I would have said, hey man, what's going on? You haven't really been going to church that often. Can I help with anything? But I didn't, because I was afraid, well, I don't know what's going on, and I was kind of ashamed back then. And that's one of my biggest regrets, is that I was ashamed, and that now I wish I could have changed things. But it taught me a valuable lesson. That lesson that if you don't stand up, there's no guarantee that another person will. And I've heard Brother Kilman say this, that if you don't stand for something, then you will fall for anything, and that cannot be more true. So how do we become unashamed? In Romans chapter 5, Paul writes saying, have patience. And from patience you will get experience, and experience hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us. I was talking to Brother Herbst, and he said, that experience that Paul's talking about, that is our testimonies. That is why we have these testimonies that God gives us, so that we will be unashamed. And I was thinking after that, I was kind of like, man, I wish I had a testimony. So many people have these great testimonies, and I'm just kind of like, well, I've been in church all my life, I don't really have a great testimony. And I just think God's the funniest person, you know? So it wasn't long after that, we were on spring break, and I was in Chicago. I just ate a giant pizza, a lot of fries, and I was feeling kind of weak. I was feeling kind of hungry, actually. It was really weird. And then just all of a sudden, I doubled over in pain, the worst pain I'd ever had in my life. And they rushed me to the hospital, and they diagnosed me with this very rare disease called SMA syndrome. And it's when your two arteries pinch off your intestine from your stomach. And so all that food backed up into my stomach, and my stomach literally took up my whole body. They said it was the biggest stomach they'd ever seen. Yeah, those of you who have seen me eat, you know, I can eat a lot. So, but all that food had just backed up, and they were about ready to operate, and if they would have they were this close to operating. They had already had my parents sign all the papers and everything. They were about to cut me open, and if they would have and just barely nicked my stomach, all of that would have gone into me and I would have died. So God lined everything up. There was the right doctor there at the right time, and he said, no, I want to get one more image before we do this. And they got that one more image, and he said, we don't need to operate, this is what we need to do. And he diagnosed it correctly. And so many people I've been reading are misdiagnosed with this at first, that so many people have died, or so many people, this ends up being like a permanent thing. They have to have a tube put in their stomach permanently, and for the rest of their life they have to get food like that. But I'm so thankful. I had to feed off of that tube for about a month. I couldn't have any real food, and it was through my nose. And today, I went to the hospital for a follow-up, and they said, everything's great, you're fine, we're taking the tube out, you can go to your room. So it just goes to show, you have that patience, God will give you a testimony. Don't worry. So be careful if you ask for one, because it's coming. So it'll take some courage, but if you earnestly pray and seek God, He'll provide us with everything we need to be unashamed. So I'd like to end it with a challenge. When that does happen, and it will happen, if somebody at your job, at your work, at just on the street, at your school, wherever, if they stop you and ask you about your faith, don't be the guy who says, oh, well, I go to church here, that's all. Don't be ashamed of God and what He's done for us, because He's done so much. Thank you.